This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com. Thank you. So glad you're here. I hope you'll like and subscribe. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about objective morality, and I'm going to do that in response to a rebuttal video by Skylar Fiction that is entitled S.J. Thomason is Clueless on the Topic of Morality. I happened upon this video today and I listened to a portion of it, and I found that what was really interesting about it was that Skylar in many cases is actually affirming that we do have objective morality, but then he goes to his cultural relativism or his moral relativism to claim that we don't have objective morality. And another thing that he does is he will go to an epistemological argument to try to refute the existence of objective morality. So we're going to listen to a little bit about his video, and then I'm going to offer some clarification on some of the terms that I think would be helpful for people who are trying to understand these topics. Here we go.
We are actually going to review a video. Now, this was, I believe, the presentation. My string that is all jacked up that I have to fix. This is the presentation SJ was going to give during the debate with myself. So we'll go over it. We'll see what she has to say.
I'd like to comment that the presentation that I wanted to go over in the debate against Skylar was originally this video, but then I came out with a better video, and it's posted on my social media account. It's also on YouTube on this channel, but I speak at length about objective morality, and I also offer a lot of academic backing. Okay, so I actually study this stuff in my field. This is very related to my field. I have a PhD in business administration with specializations in human resource management and international management. And in my areas of focus include things such as leadership and ethical decision-making and objective morality and the like. And so I am really interested in this topic. It's something I get pretty fired up about. So when I see a video that says I'm clueless on this topic that I study for my work, I get concerned. So I wanted to see what this man had to say. So let's go.
I've watched little portions of it, so I've seen a little bit of it already. But I thank you for being here this afternoon. And if you didn't get a chance, I did got a later stream last night without Dr. Josh that was, we'll say fun. And I would say definitely a hard R if you're watching. You shouldn't be watching the show with your kids anyways. But anyways, we just reviewed some videos that people sent in. If you gave me a link to a video, I literally would watch it. And it resulted in some, to say the least, very. Oh wait, we want to have both. We want to have me and there we go. To say the least, I had some interesting content on it, and got me hit with 2 copyright strikes. Not for real. Like, it's not really gonna hurt my channel or anything. It's just the kind where it demonetizes me and I have to share revenue, which I don't give a shit. That's fine. But I think we should just jump right into this today. I appreciate you all out there watching. I'll try to throw up your comments on the side. It's one of the things I do love about this kind of StreamYard software is that, like, I can literally just put your comments right there. So like this, Spartan Theology. She's talking about morality right now, and I'm a Christian, but I agree with Skylar here. It's pretty bad. Yeah, I think the way that part of it is there's a certain ignorance on our level about morality and, like, the differences in subjective, objective, absolute, universal, like these terms I don't think she is familiar with.
Which, again, is really interesting. So the idea of something being an objective moral standard or objective moral values and duties, the idea of that basically says that it's stance independent. You can go back to some academic literature and you will see that that's exactly how it's defined from even people like Street in 2006. So objective morality means it's stance independent. So it does not vary as a function of somebody's opinion, a culture's opinion, a generation's opinion, and anything else related. So the bottom line with objective morality is because we have objective morality, which means that we have objective moral obligations and objective moral values, which I'll get into in just a moment, of things such as life, liberty, justice, equity, and truth. Because we have these values and we also have these duties, the duty to follow the golden rule, for example, then there must be a transcendent moral lawgiver. And that's the clincher for Skylar. He is an atheist, so he does not admit that we have a transcendent moral lawgiver. So instead what he does is he tries to make moral relativistic arguments. But interestingly, in this video, he will agree that we have objective morality, but what he'll do is he'll couch it and just say, yes, it's wrong. It's morally wrong, or it's morality. He wants to take the word objective out, but smuggle in the meaning. So let's listen to what he says.
Like I said, not calling her a dumb person. I'm just saying that, like, just this topic, she just doesn't seem to do as well in. So as you can see on the screen, this is her website, S.J. Thomason, or her YouTube channel. And this is going to be the presentation she's going to give. And we haven't even hit play, but I can already see we have Nazis on here. Like, we're already going to Nazis when we're talking about morality. We got Anne Frank.
Now watch what he's going to do. He's going to point out that this is wrong, and he's going to point out that it's morally wrong, but he's going to try to remove the word objective. Listen in.
I know this is going to be a disaster. Like, I already know it. All right, let me know if there's any audio issues, folks. That's not what I want. There we go. Let's do this. Let's get it going.
Hey, we can talk about objective morality and whether or not we have objective morality. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Are we going to play an ad or something, or are we just...
I'm going to ask you a list of questions, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to a Q&A. So I really appreciate everyone coming by. This time I'm actually watching from a different screen so I can see your questions on another screen. So let me just actually get that adjusted. I apologize for the delay here.
I'm kind of sad that the StreamYard sign is right up here
I want
above
you to answer for me.
SJ's head here.
Think these pictures that you see and what you see in the pictures are objectively and morally wrong?
Oh, my Lord.
So right now I have a picture of Anne Frank, and many of you might know who she is. You might have read the diary of Anne Frank.
Everybody out there, is Anne Frank objectively morally wrong? I'm just joking. I'm just joking. That's not what she's asking.
Frank from World War II. She and her family were captured by the Nazis, and unfortunately she did not return from the death chambers where they burned Jewish people.
And it's not just like she's using Holocaust people in this video. She's using children. I'm looking closer at this image, and it's children in fucking concentration camp. Oh, my Lord, SJ. You don't have... All right.
This atrocity, and you can see pictured here some other people who'd been captured by Nazis. Again, Anne Frank was just a young woman, young child, completely innocent. Is this objectively wrong? Would you judge that as objectively wrong? And what does objectively wrong mean? It means it's wrong regardless of what anyone's opinion is. So this is an objective calamity on society.
Okay, let's talk about a couple things, folks. First, let's talk about what a tactic this is, and it's a dishonest one, in my opinion. This is often...
So he is saying, let's note this, that it is dishonest for us to bring up pictures of the Holocaust to help people understand what objective morality is. He's saying that this is a dishonest approach because I have found something that is objectively morally wrong, and for me to show these pictures and remind people of this atrocity that occurred in the last century, possibly that hopefully will never occur in any situation again, we see this kind of thing, but he's saying it's a dishonest tactic.
Times used by Christians like Matt Slick. Okay, you guys have all heard, is it absolutely wrong to torture a baby to death merely for someone's mere pleasure? Right? You've heard stuff like that. Is it wrong to rape children? You name it, right? They use these examples.
Let's ask the question, is it wrong to rape someone? Is it always wrong to rape someone? Is there any situation in which it is not wrong to rape someone? Raping someone is wrong. One of the reasons raping someone is wrong is because it violates their life, their liberty, their freedom, and other things. So it's just wrong, okay? And so we have some objective things that are wrong, and we have some objective things that are right. So what Skylar's doing here is he's saying I shouldn't even appeal to emotion, which I think is actually a pretty good tactic to use when you're trying to bring a case of something and be persuasive about something that you feel is true and you want to be convincing. So to be convincing, yes, you do include some emotion. It's an important contributor. It's part of what Aristotle called ethos, pathos, and logos. It's that approach. It's a pathos function in that idea. So that is one of the reasons why I brought in the Nazis.
What they're trying to do is cause an emotional response in you. Because your initial thing, right, is you just think about wrong in your head. You're going to be like, yeah, this is wrong.
No, yes, this is wrong. Okay. There's not a situation that you can say that that is not wrong. What happened to Anne Frank is objectively wrong. Now, so he's going to again say that, but then he will try to move out the word objective.
Right? But what does it mean to be wrong? That's what we're really talking about here. Like, it's okay. Like, you don't need to have that objective word up there, right? Like, if I were just to ask everybody in the audience, is it wrong to, or do you feel it's wrong for the Nazis to commit acts that they did during the Holocaust? Do you feel that it's wrong to put people in concentration camps? Right? I would hope 99% of you are going to say yes. I would hope 100 of you would say yes, 100% of you. But, there's always that weird fucking Nazi that lives out there.
So you see what he's done right here. He understands that it is wrong. However, he, instead of realizing that it's wrong, has instead decided just to remove the word objective.
But throwing the word objective up there is the trick. Because what it is, it's trying to say, well, all these other people think it's objectively wrong. Why don't you think it's objectively wrong, Skylar? Why don't you think, like, as if I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah, note that. He does think it's objectively wrong. He just doesn't like the word objective. Now, why doesn't Skylar like the word objective? One of the reasons Skylar doesn't like the word objective is because he realizes if we have objective moral values and duties to do what's right, then it follows that there must be a transcendent moral lawgiver, because these values and duties are transcendent to generations, to people, to cultures, to all of that kind of stuff. And so the source also must be transcendent. If you have a transcendent foundation and a transcendent rule, then you basically must have a source that also is transcendent. So they have to equal. And that, of course, speaks to God. And that is something that Skylar does not want to believe in.
Did. So this is a shitty tactic. And actually, I think you miss the bigger picture by pulling little games like this. Okay. Secondly, so how can something be mind independently wrong?
That's the interesting question. It's not mind independently wrong. It is stance independent. In the academic literature by people such as Street in 2006, the idea of objective morality is it is stance independent, not mind independent, stance independent. It's a very important distinction. So let me do a little bit of explaining on what I often see are problems for the moral relativists. And I'm going to do that by explaining moral ontology versus epistemology and try to distinguish the differences and when each should be used. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the types of moral ontology, speaking to moral realism and moral relativism. Moral ontology refers to whether moral values and duties objectively exist independently of people and are to be discovered by people. Ontology is defined as a branch of metaphysics that covers the nature of being. Moral ontology focuses on whether a standard of good and bad values or right and wrong duties exists. Moral epistemology refers to the knowledge of morality and how one comes to know morals and what's right and wrong. If one states that different cultures have different moral values and duties, one is applying moral epistemology. These are epistemological questions of how one comes to know moral values and duties. These are not to be conflated with whether moral values and duties exist. Some cultures may be closer to being right in their understanding of morality than others, yet this does not mean objective rights or wrongs do not exist. It is a non sequitur to state that because different cultures have different perspectives of right and wrong, that objective standards of right and wrong do not exist. For example, if I state that math objectively exists, I am making an ontological claim. A person could not claim that because he doesn't understand math, or his neighbors refuse to learn math, or people have made mistakes about math in the past, that math does not objectively exist. The person would be making a category error by using an epistemological argument to say math doesn't exist. The same stands for our objective morality, which is self-evident. As the United Nations and many nations affirm, we hold certain values to be self-evident: life, liberty, justice, truth, and equity. Numerous global studies affirm this and also affirm humanity's moral duties to follow the golden rule. These values and duties that humanity holds, has always held, and will always hold, do not vary as a function of any one person's opinions about them, or any culture's opinions, or the opinions of people in our era, or in any era. If the Nazis ruled the world and eliminated large portions of supposedly inferior humans, and their rule of law was considered doctrine, it would not change humanity's axiomatic beliefs in life, liberty, truth, justice, and equity. There are two types of moral ontology: moral realism and moral relativism. Moral realists believe that one truth exists, and truth is unchanging and discoverable via objective measurements. This is a deductive approach from general to specific, which suggests that one can start from a generalization to make specific hypotheses about reality. Using a moral realism perspective, Hofster in 2017 helped to better define objectivity in morality. He said, "Consider the claim that the earth revolves around the sun. This claim is true. It states a fact. And this truth or fact is fully independent of what any agent thinks or feels about it. Similarly, moral realists maintain that moral truths or facts are fully independent of the attitudes of any agent." Street in 2006 argued there are objective stance-independent moral truths. Moral relativists believe that truth does not exist without meaning, so truth is dependent upon the meaning you attach to it. Reality is created and it evolves and changes depending on one's context and situations. This is an inductive approach from specific to general, which suggests that one analyzes the specifics of various situations and transfers those specifics to other similar contexts. However, moral relativism has a fatal flaw, which moral relativists fail to realize. Oftentimes, moral relativists express their dismay at someone or something, labeling them as dishonest, unjust, inhumane, or unfair, while not realizing that they're appealing to our objective moral standards. Moral relativism means that one cannot appeal to any objective standard, since objective standards of truth, justice, life, and fairness do not exist. They're only matters of one's opinion, of the prevalent opinions within their societies or cultures. Moral ontology usually employs an etic or more quantitative and objective methodology, whereas moral epistemology usually uses an emic or more qualitative and contextual approach. Compare this with a fishbowl analogy. If one is applying an etic view, one would analyze a fishbowl of a culture from an objective position outside of it. If one is applying an emic view, one would analyze the fishbowl from within the fishbowl. Moral ontology dictates one's epistemological beliefs. In other words, what people believe about reality will influence the relationship one thinks one should have to reality. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to portions of Skylar's video to see where he is making an epistemological mistake.
I'm going to skip through just a little bit because until we get to the next screen.
Commoditized as it is here. So now let's look at global levels of moral ontology. So I'm going to list a few studies that have identified some universals across the globe. So I just talked about at the cultural level, we see distinctions between cultures and we see a lot of differences between cultures.
Okay.
However, if we go to the higher level, at the global level, we're going to notice that when people do surveys of people all around the world, they find that we have these commonalities.
Okay, SJ. All right, here's the problem with this whole argument that she's about to make is that this period of time, all these things are similar among these cultures, right? Go back 100 years, SJ. Let's see if the similarities are different. I bet you if you were to go back a couple hundred years, it would be very similar that most cultures accepted slavery.
So what he is doing right now is he is trying to say that because these data were collected in this century, that this would not apply to the earlier studies. What's really interesting is I actually had posted in this video a link, not a link, but a reference to a person called Westmark who did a study in 1906, and they found very similarly to the sort of findings that you're seeing right here. These findings are coming out again and again and again in study after study. And so we're identifying these universals. Now, I didn't say objective morality in this point. I was talking about global universals. So universal means they apply to everyone. And of course, the way to determine whether or not people have global universals is to survey them and find out what their values are. This is the way that you can discover this. And if you find that when you survey thousands and thousands of people all over the world, and you find that we have these universals that everyone seems to agree to, the vast majority agree to, that sort of thing, then that must mean we have something that's universal. Now, I did not make the objective claim here, so let's see what else Skylar has to say.
That most cultures treated women as property. Like, Is this really the argument you're going to?
So what he's doing here is the epistemological flaw. He is saying that because people did one thing or their interpretation was one way, that objective morality does not exist. And of course, you can't use that sort of an argument of how someone came to a belief to claim, or how someone interprets a belief to claim the belief does not exist. Again, going back to my math example, if I said I had a hard time with math, therefore math does not exist, you would realize that is a ridiculous argument. And the same thing applies here.
To make is that right now in this point in history, there tends to be these universal beliefs because of similarities between human beings. This is, I don't know, someone should have helped SJ. Somebody give this woman some love.
And this is something that's not as expressed in universities. It's kind of sad because people love to focus on relativism and they love to focus on our differences and diversity and that kind of stuff. Yes, there are numerous cross-cultural studies on morality and on intelligence. In fact, there are really interesting findings from these studies. And of course, these are some of the studies that I've referenced right here in the video on morality, not on intelligence. And a lot of times they don't focus on our similarities. So for example, Kinnear found that we have a commitment to something greater than oneself. There's self-respect, but with humility, self-discipline, and acceptance of personal responsibility. People appreciate respect and caring for others, and that's the golden rule, and you'll find that in every major world religion, atheism, humanism, and the United Nations. And people tend to care for other living things and the environment. Other studies have found similarly, like for example, Dalsgaard and company found 6 recurrent values in a survey of 8 religious traditions: courage, temperance, justice, transcendence, humanity, and wisdom. And in a survey using psychological, historical, juridical, theological, and ethnographical research, Westmark identified.
So let me get this straight. You did a survey, or these people did a survey, where they asked people their opinion and what they find as valuable or good. And somehow we're going to connect this to moral objectivism. Asking people their opinions somehow equals moral objectivism.
What way would he propose that you could determine whether or not people have global universals? Again, he's conflating what I said about universals with objectivism. Identified universals in the approval of honesty, charity, mutual aid, and generosity, along with the prohibition of theft and homicide. Henrik and colleagues examined 15 societies, finding that fairness and trust were exhibited in all. So do atheists
go back in time, folks. Go back in time and see, like when you say homicide, like it'd depend on who you're talking.
Okay, so again, he's using the wrong approach to address the questions I was asking. And if you recall, I did point to the United Nations, which also talks about the value of life. If you go back to our founding fathers in the United States, hundreds of years ago, the same exact values were held self-evident. Okay, life, liberty, justice, equality, those sorts of things are values, and they were self-evident according to the founding fathers hundreds of years ago. Now, what's really interesting in this particular portion of the video is I'm going to show what Jonathan Haidt, who is an atheist, finds about objective morality. Now, Jonathan Haidt finds that we do have objective morality. He established 5 foundations of morality. However, he tries to ground them in evolution, and that's another video and another subject. But let's watch what Skylar has to say. Now, if Skylar had done his homework, he would see that Jonathan Haidt has surveyed over 30,000 people, and he's found these foundations of morality, and these foundations are stands as follows, and you're going to see them right here. And then Skylar is going to try to say that we should agree on one of the foundations that Jonathan Haidt has discovered, and that we should agree that this shouldn't be a good foundation. So let's see what he says.
Talking about certain points in history, people would have no issue with committing homicide against certain cultures. And
again, whether or not people had no issue or people had opinions on things does not impact whether or not objective morality exists. So again, he's making an epistemological argument, once again, trying to make that claim. We can go back even to the Bible, and you can identify many places in the Bible where we can see what our objective moral standard looks like. Jesus.
Certain peoples. It doesn't. I don't like if you were to take those surveys, Lord SJ. Raptor Jesus, take the wheel.
Believe we have global universals, and are they subject to change? So I've got a couple of issues going on here. Jonathan Haidt has done a lot of work on what he calls moral foundations theory. And he surveyed evolutionary theories about human and primate sociality, along with lists of virtues and taxonomies of morality from psychology and anthropology to moral concerns or virtues that were shared widely across cultures. And from this, they found 5 foundations of morality. Now, Jonathan Haidt is an atheist, and a lot of atheists, like I've got someone I know on Twitter called Adam Friended, and there are also people like Sam Harris. They also believe that we have objective.
Yo, you want to watch a good debate? Watch my debate with Adam Friended on objective morals. It didn't go well for Adam. He got some feedback from, I think, his own audience and from the modern day debate audience. Didn't go that well. I like Adam. He's a cool dude. But, man, his argument was kind of weak. And remember, though, the kinds of morality that they're like Adam would argue for and SJ are completely different. Like, they're
really interesting statement, because both Adam and I have very heavily referenced Jonathan Haidt, and he is saying this while he's even looking at the Jonathan Haidt information and saying that Adam and I use a completely different sense of morality. No, Adam actually also believes we have objective morality. The distinction between us is where we think the source comes from. Adam thinks it's steeped in evolution. I say it's steeped in God.
moral foundations are different. That's not God in Adam's foundation. In fact, Adam would.
Of course, if you look at the video, it does not say it's God in the foundation right there. It says there are 5 foundations of morality. And what the question is what are the source of this foundation of morality? And that's where God comes in.
Argue you don't even need a God to argue objective morals, which kind of defeats the purpose of almost everything that SJ is arguing here.
Moral values. And so they looked at these 5 foundations, and they said that everyone tends to focus especially on care and harm and fairness, reciprocity, but also these other factors also tend to be foundations of morality across cultures. And these are in-group loyalty, authority, and purity, sanctity. And then they later added liberty and oppression. And these are...
Wait a minute. Why is authority a moral value? I wouldn't consider authority. I mean, that's certain. I don't know. I would, actually, let me ask this. Let's poll the audience, 138 people watching. If you think authority is a moral value, type the word pizza.
Okay, so now we've sort of gone down to a new level. So to sum up this entire video, one of the things that we should note is that if you're going to argue on whether or not objective morality exists, you need to use the moral ontological argument. So you need to focus on ontology, not on epistemology. So you cannot go back and use why people were what people were thinking about particular topics or why they were doing certain things to argue that something doesn't exist. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you came by today. Please like, subscribe, and do come again. Bye-bye.